Let's go behind the mask.
Welcome back to another edition of the Behind the Mask podcast. I am your host, Takeo Spikes. And somewhere out there floating around, my co-host is coming in. What up, bruh?
What's good, family? How you doing, man?
Plus size model, man.
In the building, Tucson Rays. You know what it is.
What's happening? Everything good with you?
Another day in paradise.
I feel you, man. So we gonna jump right into it, though, without further ado, because we have a special guest, and we're gonna bring him in, man. He's very highly decorated when it comes to championships. The 93 Maxwell Award and Davy O'Brien winner, also the Heisman winner, first round pick of the New York Knicks, Charlie Ward. Welcome to the Behind the Mask podcast show.
Hey, I appreciate you guys having me on. I know I'm trying to figure out how big time I am because you asked me to come on your show, and I know you guys are big time, so I'm definitely appreciating the love, opportunity to come on and speak with you guys.
Man, we appreciate the time that you're giving us because, like this, our roots run deep now. You a Georgia boy from South Georgia.
Correct.
I'm from Georgia, and I was inspired, especially after just seeing your story going through Florida State, 93, that was the championship season. And the thing that I remember most about that season, man, was it was when y'all played Notre Dame at home. Mm-hmm. And everybody was anticipating, okay, you get through that game, it's a shoe-in that you'll go be in the national championship, but you guys lost. And I remember seeing the receiver, I think, Matt Fryer?
Right.
And he was crying, telling the voters back then, look, you guys gotta give us a chance. And you guys ran the table after that. But I appreciate that inspiration, man. You really did a lot, not only just for everybody in the nation, but especially the young black kids, all the kids in Georgia.
Well, actually, we played that game on the road. And, of course, Notre Dame didn't cut the grass that week, and they wet the grass before we got there. So we had some issues that we had to work through early on. But it was one of those games, very competitive for most of the game. And one of the top tier teams, or top teams, in a competitive game, it comes down to turnovers, runs, and those types of things. And so we were, a very good team, just like they were. And the game came down to the final drive. And in competitive games, guys have to step up and make plays. And we weren't able to step up and make a play at the end where I threw the ball into the end zone to York that got knocked down. But, yes, Matt Fryer was sitting on the 2-yard line. And if I could have gotten it to him, there's a possibility. But I was always taught that on the last play, you don't want to throw the ball short of the goal line. You want to try to get it into the end zone if you can.
Right.
Just so you can give yourself a chance. And, I did that. It didn't work out. But, yes, we were afforded the opportunity after we ran the table against North Carolina State the next week. But, of course, Notre Dame lost the following week to Boston College. And then we ended up beating University of Florida in the swamp when they had a 23 home game winning streak, and we were afforded the opportunity to play in the national championship Orange Bowl. One of the things that we always thought was during that time we had run off a lot of bowl wins, and it was if we could get into a national championship in a bowl game, we knew we had a chance to win a national championship, and we were blessed to be able to do that year.
Oh yeah, that y'all did, bro. But what's mind-boggling to me is you win the Maxwell Award, Davy O'Brien for the best quarterback, the Heisman, the ultimate, and then you don't even get drafted in the NFL. Bro, what was that process like from just on the mental side? What were you going through?
This is one of the things when I go out and speak, I talk to people about how you have to make decisions and then you have to live with the consequences. And so the decision I made was I was going to keep my options open. So I continued to play basketball my senior year. And when I did that, that kind of eliminated the 100% throwing all my eggs into the NFL basket out the window, because I wanted to keep my options open. And so I wasn't 100% committed to the NFL. And for me, being a 6-foot quarterback during that time, I didn't really have the say so to be able to tell a front office guy that if I didn't get drafted in the first round, that I would consider my other options. As we know, that's a no-no, and that's what I did. But I did go through some of the draft process on campus, throwing pro day on campus. I did go to the second combine where they were doing injuries because I had an injury to my shoulder while playing basketball. And so I did do those things, but I wasn't 100% committed. And so I knew that there was a chance that I wouldn't get drafted. That wouldn't happen during my time. You had to be 6'3" or 6'4", 250 pounds or whatever it was, and with a cannon arm and all those types of things during that time to be a first-round pick. I was slotted to be a third or fourth round pick during, the 93, 94 draft. And if I was going to have an opportunity to play in the NBA and put my time in to give myself an opportunity to be in the first round in the NBA, then it just didn't make sense for me to be drafted in the third or fourth round in football and then possibly get drafted in the first round in basketball. And that would have kind of, not been, it'll kind of give me a choice. But my prayer through the whole thing was, God, please close the door and open the door. And he closed the door by not even giving me a job opportunity in the NFL. And so I knew that was my key to be able to move on and prepare for the NBA draft.
I think the amazing thing about that story is you were so young, 22, 23 years old, and you had options of which professional career you wanted to partake in, right? One of the things that skeptics did say, to your point, is that your style of play may not translate into an NFL quarterback. You see the same thing nowadays with Lamar Jackson, with the Baltimore Ravens, when Russell Wilson came out a few years ago with the Seahawks. Why is there still a stigma with athletic, shorter, black quarterbacks some 25 plus years later in the NFL?
Well, I don't know. I think they're starting to, those guys are starting to give more opportunities for the guys that come behind them. And I know for myself, they just weren't going to take a guy like me in the first round. And so that wasn't happening. So today they're actually doing that. So that's a great blessing. That's about 25 years later. But I do believe those guys that you mentioned, Lamar and Russell, and even Kyler Murray, who had a great first week, last week. Those guys are starting to change position a little bit, which, most defensive players do not like quarterbacks that can move, that are mobile, that are elusive. I'm sure Takeo can tell you that.
Hate it.
Because they have to face them. They have to account for them all the time. And so that helps out the offense. And then if he can pass, it's like a double threat. And so that's the thing that Lamar Jackson has grown into, and all the, quarterbacks as well. They've kind of grown into that. And it's just opening up a market for those guys now who are playing in college, who may be in a spread system, to know that they can find, they can move on to the NFL. Before playing the spread system, it was like death. They put that stigma on you that you can't, get underneath the center and take a snap, and you can't do a drop and all those types of things. Even though you take a drop out of the shotgun, a drop is a drop, regardless if you take it from underneath the center or in the shotgun, in my eyes. So I just think those guys are starting to open up more opportunities for quarterbacks that are very similar in college now.
What at what moment, because you talked about blessings and the blessings to be able to have that opportunity of choice, like what was that moment for you to where you knew all right, this is my path as far as I'm going to go to the NBA. And hey, listen, you were very successful. First round pick, 26 overall. Like, what was that moment that really honed in for you that made you realize this is going to be my future?
It really, for me, right after my senior year playing basketball at Florida State, I sat down, with the people that I need to sit down with to find out what my draft status was in the NFL, and also kind of what I needed to do to improve my stock in the NBA. And so I'd played football and had some success. And so I felt like I was to a point where I can continue to improve in that area. But the thing that I was needing the most was my basketball skill development. So I really, after basketball season, put a lot of time into preparing for the NBA portion of my professional career. And when pro day came around, I was in quote unquote basketball shape. So I was like 182 pounds. I was like 5'11" and a quarter when I measured in. And then I went to pro day and I threw the ball, decent for the most part, and still moved around. But I just wasn't at a weight that and height that, was conducive to first round pick in the NFL at that time. And so I just made a call that I was going to put more time after basketball season into prepare for the NBA draft. And I did go out and throw with some of the guys during that time as well. So I was double dipping again from basketball to football, but I was putting more time into basketball because I was further behind in that area. And so there was a calculated risk, and it actually worked out in the end. But I'm grateful. I was grateful for the experience, and just not being drafted in the NFL was a great humbling experience. But it was also a great moment that I got to share with family because they were there for the NFL draft, and I didn't get drafted. There were more people who were upset that I didn't get drafted than I was, family members. But I just knew that I was going to, I put myself in that situation and I was going to live with the consequences.
And you did a great job. Obviously, New York native. You rocking the New York Knicks shirt. I'm loving it right now. What was it like growing up? Well, for me growing up, watching the Knicks in the 90s was difficult because we could never get over that hump to win a championship. But what was it like playing for the Knicks in the 90s?
I was there 1 year with Coach Riley. The next year after they went to the finals against the Houston Rockets. But it was great. When I was at the Heisman a few months before, I'm from Thomasville, Georgia. It was a small town. Then I went to Tallahassee, which was a bigger, city, but it's not New York. And when I got to New York, one of the things that we had heard about all the time was New York was this way. And I had, this preconceived notion of what New York was like. And then when I got there, the people were rude. You couldn't talk to them. People were driving crazy. The whole deal. So when I left New York to come back home from the Heisman, I said, man, there's no way I would ever be able to live in New York. And so I always tell people, if you ever want to test God and you want to be in a certain place, just say you'll never be somewhere. And so, lo and behold, the next few months, I was in New York with a job playing for the Knicks. But it was a great experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything. We had some great success, but being in the community, the challenges that I had, some of the challenges I had was great because, it made me a better person, Christian. And so it's just something that you always remember, and I'm grateful for that experience.
It's funny, Takeo says all the time that there's very few people he knows from New York, but I'm the only one that he trusts.
Hey, bro, like you came up in that era to where like faith is obviously big to you, but it was big to everybody else. But like I remember like rushing to get out of the door to go home so I could see the NBA. And so you had a lot of big trials, people who you went up against. What was it like, bro? Like going up against Jordan, though?
Well, I never beat him. And
don't feel bad. A lot of people didn't.
Yeah, that's true. And I have two stories. One, I have a picture of me blocking his shot. Of course, to me, I blocked his shot. Maybe someone else, it was a foul at the rim. I challenged at the rim, believe it or not. Yes, 6'1", 5'11", whatever it is, 6'6", 6'8", whatever he was. And I challenged at the rim. So that was one story. And then the next story was I got dunked on by Jordan.
Picked off by Harper. Fires it down. Jordan with Ewing back. Jordan around Ewing. Oh, what a moment.
And so how many people can say that and be proud of it? I go around and tell people I'm proud of getting dunked on by Jordan. And I'm glad that my team found me blocking his shot. So now I have two great stories. One is a positive and one is a negative. But either or, you're talking about one of the best, one of the greatest basketball players to ever play the game, and you got an opportunity to compete against him, and you got an opportunity to block his shot one time, and then you got an opportunity to get dunked on because you tried to block his shot again, and he remembered it.
Hey, that's a great memory to have though with the block shot. But let me ask you this: let's fast forward over to your Florida State Noles. And okay. They've been struggling, bro. Like we can't even hide it. Like I think college football is better when Florida State is relevant. So give us the inside scoop. What you see? Why is it that you guys are struggling? You're not even getting like the top players anymore like you used to.
Well, we're getting the type of players that we need to be successful. It's very similar to, I always talk about the organization, and this is any organization, business, sports, it really doesn't matter.
Right.
When you've had stability at the top, meaning you've had the president, the AD, and the head coach all aligned, and for us, we had Coach Bowden for 30 plus years. And so he was the only voice. People got accustomed to him. The players enjoyed playing for him. We came to school to play for Coach Bowden in Florida State. And then we made the change to Coach Jimbo Fisher. He had a good run while he was here. And then at the end, he decided he wanted to go to the SEC. And then that kind of started the downfall. The last couple of years where Jimbo was trying to find his way, trying to see if, the SEC kept flirting with the SEC. And that's when we started to lose a little focus. And after that, you started to have, you had Jimbo, then you had Coach Taggart come in, and now we have Coach Mike Norville. All of these hires, as far as the last, 3 or 4 years, we've had two coaches in the last, 3 years, 3 years. And so that is just the recipe for not having stability or success. Because we just won the national championship, of course, against Auburn in 2013.
You got to remind me, right? You got to hit me with the jab.
Since you were just asking about Florida State, so, it's just been 7 years. Coach Norville is here with us now, and he has stability from the top, from the president, the AD, and now he's working to try to get the boosters and everyone else on board. And I just think it's something that we've had to go through to be able to get us to where we need to get to.
All right, Charlie, man, you talked about your faith, how it's guided you throughout your career and throughout your life. Talk about Cause and what that means to you.
Well, Cause was definitely a special time in our lives. It stands for Christian Athletes United for Spiritual Empowerment. And it was started by Reggie White and some of the football NFL guys. and we were brought into the fold as the NBA group, and I brought Allen Houston and some of the other NBA guys, that LaFonso Ellis and his family, and Monty Williams and his family. And so we kind of brought some of the NBA guys over to join Chris calls. But Reggie White was very instrumental in my life as an NBA player, because he allowed me to, he helped me to start our Bible study. I was struggling spiritually on the road, watching things that I shouldn't have been watching, inappropriate things. And he helped me to start a Bible study on the road, just encouraging me to get a study guide for the group. And that encouragement helped us to become, to help us grow in our walk with the Lord. And so it was definitely a great group to be around, because we all had the same similar issues, whether it's with family, whether it's, walking our faith out, and just to be able to have someone in the same line of work, it definitely helps when you're trying to live a life for Christ.
Well, C. Ward, man, we appreciate the time, my brother. You coming on, man, and you definitely leaving an example, not only for myself, even from being from New York, but all of the other kids, man. I know it has to be somewhat gratifying to see a Russell Wilson, a Lamar Jackson, a Cam Newton. Back in the day when you came out, they didn't want to give us a chance or an opportunity because we didn't fit the build, supposedly. But now you see these quarterbacks now are the new face of the league. So we appreciate your innovation from back in the 90s and your faith. And, man, we appreciate you coming on. Thanks for copping on, bro.
Well, I appreciate y'all having me behind the mask.
Sure. Yeah.